Called the Jamaica Select meeting for July 13th to order at 7:05. We are meeting here somewhat in person at the Jamaica Town Hall and also via Zoom. So the first item is to call for any late additions to the agenda. Anybody have? Joel?
Well, as you requested that I survey the Route 30 Speedway situation, and I have a report on that.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's on the agenda.
We were, yeah, that's under the discuss potential solutions for speeding and safety concerns in town. So okay. That'll be kind of a larger topic with a lot of input. Yep. And so I did have a couple things just to maybe bump ahead of that, just to kind of check them off. Paul had asked to move up the hazard mitigation plan approval. And then Chris had asked to move up just a real quick update on the communication union district. But anybody have anything else? Okay. First item then is to approve the minutes from the June 22nd Select Board meeting.
So moved.
All right, Andy moves.
I second the motion.
Second, Jessica. Any other comments or feedback? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. So we have 4 in favor. Paul's not on yet, so meeting minutes are approved. Typically, this is always on the top of our agenda anyways, just to review the timesheets and the pay orders. For the time period, we're still approving those. I am still approving those, so I'd welcome any kind of feedback anybody has. I'll probably go in a little bit later this week.
Terry's email said they were in the Google Drive. I saw the traffic ordinance. I didn't see the new payrolls updated and expense orders. Did I just missed that somehow?
I had the opposite of that. I saw the pay orders, but no ordinance.
I did see them all, but I only because I looked at new items. I didn't necessarily delve down into the folder.
I have it on new items only. I have it on last modified.
Huh.
I don't know why. All right, but I'm sure there's nothing to object to. I just.
Yeah, and I'll welcome. I mean, any kind of feedback or concerns, we can definitely take care of those. I mean, we can address those. I'm not signing off on them right now.
You know what? I just reopened the folder and now it appeared. It's weird. It's weird. Okay.
Mary just actually put them there now. She's okay.
No, it says 404, but for some reason it didn't appear in my folder earlier. I don't know why.
Yeah. Okay. So if anybody has anything on those, they look pretty straightforward to me. We can just let me know. So I did bump up. Paul's still not online, but I'll jump to you, Chris, just for kind of just some of these ongoing projects that we have out there. You know, the communication union district being one of them. I kind of perpetually put that as just an agenda item, just for some quick updates. There's always something happening, but we'll hear from Chris.
There's a couple of 4 things that I can report on. The first is that DV Fiber has joined the Vermont Communication Union District Association. This is an association of 5 CUDs, or communication union districts, that are banding together to form an association to exchange experience, expertise, and probably most important, form a more effective lobbying group at the state and federal level for funding and issues affecting implementing broadband in the state. The second item is we've received a $10,000 grant from the Vermont Community Foundation. There's no strings attached. We're using this for bootstrapping expenses to little nickel and dime stuff, really, but any organization needs to get started. The governor signed the CARES Act, which provides up to $100,000 grant to communication union districts but the Public Service Board has yet to publish the rules to apply for the grant. They're expected any day, and we're going to apply as soon as they're published. The third thing is John and I have both been appointed advisors, Starlink monitors, to the CUD's vendor committee. One of the issues the vendor committee has to address is the risk of competition from other sources. And Starlink, if you believe all the Elon Musk's hype, could potentially, provide formative competition for us. So we've got to monitor their progress and see whether that's really true or not. And finally, one of the objectives of the early objectives of the CUD is to get a substantial pre-subscription list of people who sign up to be customers in advance of the network being built. And the advantage for doing this is as soon as main cable passes your address, you'll be connected. So this will be a connect as you go list. Otherwise, if you wait, they'll wait until they've got a batch of connections and then go back and connect the batch. So it'll be later in getting connected up to the net. The big advantage to the CUD is that having a big list of pre-subscribers will give us leverage. It'll help us get bridge funding from the state, give us leverage in dealing with contractors, and most importantly, get favorable terms when we go to the bond market. So I'm going to be working on it very hard, and I hope to get some help from a broadband committee in the town to build as big a list from Jamaica as we can. So that's what's happened so far.
Excellent. Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, John, too, and Jessica for being on top of that.
It's all Chris.
Yeah, it's Chris and John more than me, but I'm very glad to hear, Chris and John, that watching Elon Musk company is now kind of formally part of the process, because certainly the stock market believes it's going to happen, and there are, others more knowledgeable that also kind of view that as a real possibility. So glad to see that it's actually formally part of the work of the committee.
Super. Yeah.
Jessica, anytime you want to drive in my Tesla, I'll let you have a spin.
Will do.
We'll break some speed limits, but we won't tell the police.
Okay.
Don't tell Joel either.
Do it in another town. So, okay. So, Paul, when we did shuffle a few things around on the agenda, so we have the review and adopt the local hazard mitigation plan, and we'll take it from you. You're still on mute. There you go. So, ball's in your court.
Okay. The item says review and adopt the updated local hazard mitigation plan. I sent it all to you, and I think I sent it all to you again this past week just to make sure everyone had it. And all we really need to do is decide to adopt it tonight and then get it all signed by us all. I can get a copy of it too. It's just simply a one-page thing. It won't show up very good, and I'll get it to the office, and then as we can drift in, sign it tomorrow, and get out. I was hoping to get it done tonight, but it's not going to happen. So, but all it really is at this stage is just basically signing the resolution adopting the local hazard. And what it says is whereas, now therefore be it resolved, the town of Jamaica, Vermont adopts the town of Jamaica local hazard mitigation plan, as well as future revisions and maintenance required by 44 CFR 201.6 and FEMA for a period of 5 years from the state of resolution. That's it. Adopted, put the date, we all select it, the whole select board signs it, and then we mail it off to get it officially logged. That's really all there is to it. So I would entertain a motion to, unless there's some other questions, I'd like to see a motion to adopt the resolution.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second it.
Any further discussion? And hearing none, all in favor of adopting the local hazard mitigation plan, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous approval. Thank you, Paul, for ushering that through.
Oh, by the way, for those of you who look closely at our invoices, you'll see the invoice for us to pay Wyndham Regional for this work. The way that works out is we pay for it, and then there was a grant available. We'll then get reimbursed by the grant. So when you see that on the invoices, that's what this is.
Okay.
Okay.
So just keeping track of here, I juggled a few things around. Guess we can move on to actually item number 5. That's kind of a holding a placeholder on there too that we always have just to update on discussion regarding town operations. It's always moving targets, I guess, or moving pieces to it as far as running the office and running the transfer station. We are working through a few issues with the collection of the organics with our new vendor. It's a different process and it's been quite cumbersome. So we're trying to dial that in a little bit. And then
I talked with Dan yesterday. He said we may be trying to look at Casella to continue to do that. We're going to go back to them maybe.
That's an option. And right now we're still gathering information because tomorrow's going to be the first pickup the way Triple T has proposed doing it. So their collection, Casella had specific containers for it and they picked it up once a week. Triple T, in their proposal, we were collecting it in organic bags, and then prior to the compactor being hauled away, we would put those bags into the compactor. So there's concerns about them breaking open. There's a lot of moving of the compost. I mean, it's fairly heavy. Keith's going to go up there and help tomorrow with that. So we're gathering information at this point. But the upside is it's free, but it's not really free. I mean, there's a lot of work that Dan's been involved with. We now need to get the road crew in there every other week when we haul it away. It's messy, ugly stuff.
Okay.
So my thought is that I'm going to bring that back to the table. I mean, that's just some foreshadowing. And Casella has indicated that they would be open to just handling that portion of our business. And Triple T has said that they're willing to work with us because we're one of the first people to do it. So there's one town doing it so far and their operations are a little different than ours. So it's not really a true test.
Okay.
Happy to share anything more or certainly go up there and check it out, as many of you probably already have.
Yeah, it looked like a mess.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Looks like it and smells like it.
Smells like it. Yeah. Yeah, so some growing pains, I guess. All right, so that's all I had. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add anything regarding the town operations.
Well, I think we have to consider, I guess, in the community, there's been a spike of COVID cases. I know that Londonderry closed their town office down today because there was exposure there. So we just need to be more careful. I mean, we were going to have this meeting in person. We're all like, oh, okay, we're kind of getting past it all, but we're really not getting past it all. So just continue to be diligent.
Yeah, and Paul was going to add on too. I mean, some updates from the state health department too, related to that.
Well, I can do that now. One of the things that I do want to add to it is the fact that as we've been talking all along about easing up the access to the town hall with Londonderry's action that you just alluded to, and another set of actions in Manchester that they had on TV tonight, I don't think we're anywhere near ready to start opening it up yet. We still need to keep it pretty strictly contained, I think. Do you want me to cover the update on the COVID now, or you want to wait till later?
Yeah, actually, I'd say let's do it now. I think it's actually a good segue. It's related, and we'll just kind of do a brief on that.
Okay. A couple of things. One is the numbers. I get this daily thing from the health department. Total cases, and because the governor doesn't have his Monday briefing anymore, I thought I'd give it to you for him. Total cases right now are 1,300. There have been 6 new ones. I'm not sure if in that 6 they include the ones from Londonderry, because I'm not sure how exactly how fast this news is breaking. But we do need to understand that it's getting really, really close to home. There's only 2 hospitalized. There's still only 56 deaths, which is, I guess, a good news. They've tested 76,581. 1,555 travelers have been monitored, and they have completed like 3,243 monitorings. So those are just the numbers that they release all the time. There is another significant piece of this, and it's got less to do with the town office, but it has a lot to do with the town functioning. In tonight's briefing for the July 13th, there's a reference to a commentary published by 2 University of Vermont pediatric infectious disease specialists in a journal of pediatrics. This is the American Academy of Pediatrics. It concludes that children infrequently transmit COVID-19 to each other or to adults. Now, it's basically a commentary. It is not a peer-reviewed study. I went online and read the report, and it talks about how it's compared other countries, what they've found from their children. There is no double-blind study. No one's going to infect one set of kids and not infect another, so we're never going to have that. So what we're left with is sort of anecdotal kinds of reports from other reasonable people. So from around the world, there's different connections, and they all seem to indicate that it's unlikely that the kids are passing it to the adults. Now, they're saying they don't seem to be passing it to each other either, but everybody's worried, and I think justifiably so, that the kids could bring it home to their families and or share it with their teachers before they go home. So if you want, that article is it's on the internet. It's called COVID-19 Transmission and Children, the child is not to blame. And basically, like I said, it's a commentary to people out of UVM, pediatric infectious disease people. It's an interesting read. It's not a long read, but basically it's documenting multiple reports from around the world on this topic. And that's, I'm guessing that's the best we can do, because like I said, there's not going to be any double-blind studies with kids. So we pretty much have to kind of take our cues from what's going on around the rest of the world. That's just to add to the discussion about how to manage the upcoming school year. It's not definitive, doesn't say one way or the other, but it's just something to add to your brain as you're thinking about and having this discussion as the school year is looming on our horizon. So that's what I got from, there's other usual stuff, but those are the 2 most germane pieces from the health department's daily update on the novel coronavirus for today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Andy, you wanted to add something?
Yes. As I talked to you earlier, I was talking with our rep, Kelly Padula, and I'm just mentioning this because it should come out tomorrow that it sounds like there'll be a couple of dozen cases close to us. Londonderry, Stratton, and Manchester. And
It's 35 cases, guys.
well, she just said that that there's a lot of testing and tracing going on, and that she was careful how she worded it, but said it could be quite a bit more. And so I just wanted to add to that. And it is hitting home with me as one of our friends who is a dog sitter of ours. Of course, we haven't had to use her in quite some time. She's home sick with COVID. She was diagnosed with it, and she's home with it, ill, in a town not too far from here. So.
Yep. Don't let our guards down.
Nope. So I guess there'll be some kind of official or some kind of release. Maybe the governor will say something tomorrow. I think Tuesdays and Fridays, but she said she would get back to me, but she was getting an important call and had to let me go.
Yeah, I've heard big numbers, not big, but those numbers floated.
Alarming numbers for considering what's
Yeah.
been going on.
Yeah.
So the latest that I've heard is there's 35 cases that have just been recently reported from Route 11 from the junction of 11 and 30 up to Londonderry, and then on Route 30 to Bonneville. And so that's the latest.
Yeah, we'll wait.
The governor's meeting's on Wednesday and Friday.
Okay. Sorry.
All right, I thought it was Tuesday also. Yeah, Joel, you had something to that?
Yeah. I read a story, and I can't confirm where I read it recently, that in the North Shire region and including Route 30, there were 45 cases.
Yeah.
And that was about 8 or 10 hours ago.
Yeah. So the numbers are significant, and I mean, we're not the source of the information, so I always try to refrain from actually pushing information, but the real takeaway is that it's all around us, and we have to continue our diligence, and if anything, consider rolling back things and not opening up things.
We should be encouraging the governor to make it mandatory for masks, and so far he's not willing to do that.
No. Yeah.
I know that the restaurants, many of the restaurants up at Stratton have closed as well. They were open the last couple of weekends, and now they've all closed. I think Mulligan's is still open, but they're thinking about closing. I know the Fox is now closed too. In Bonneville, they shut down. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. It's kind of heavy information, but it's out there. So the next item on the agenda is discussion and potential solutions or recommendations for the speeding and safety concerns in town. And both Joel and Paul volunteered last meeting to kind of spearhead little research discussions, information gathering groups. And I believe they each have a significant amount of stuff to report. So I'm trying to get a sense of, I think this is important enough that we do want to take some actions out of it. So we'll have to, kind of boil it down to what makes sense to implement and to take care of right away, and what needs a little bit more research and go from there. So, I mean, it's always an ongoing thing, I guess. So Joel, do you want to jump in, start first, or it's a coin toss? You're up on my screen first.
Okay, sure. First of all, the ideas that I came up with, and I have some other people's ideas, but I'll read mine first. I think you and I have spoken about those flashers that give the speed limit, and I know that it's easy to be speeding when you're coming into town, even if you don't mean to be. And I know that when I see those, and I see them all along the roads because I travel to Bellows Falls a lot, and all the towns have, or not all the towns, Cambridgeport has one. I know Bellows Falls has one or two. And you react to them. I mean, if you care, you react to them. So that doesn't take into consideration the people who don't care. But I think that's an important adjunct. I think more speed signs, maybe bigger, more creative speed signs, maybe especially coming down the hill, further up, so trucks have a chance to see that speed sign and slow down. The crossing walk lines need to be painted frequently. Once a year, maybe once every 2 years, but more than they've been done. I know, and I'm not going to mention names now, but I know that there are commercial vehicles that come down the hill pretty fast. And they come through Jamaica way more than 30 miles an hour. We can directly reach out to those people. We can tell them very nicely that we know they don't mean to do harm, but they really need to observe the speed limits in towns. And that would be a first contact. I think the owners of the company would agree with that, but they have to make it extend to the drivers. And we also know people who do it, and we can caution people that we know to do it. And most of the people that we know aren't speeding through town on purpose. The people who are speeding through town on purpose are mostly tourists. I mean, I see it all day, so I know what's going on. And we need to find a way to bring it to their attention. I like the signs that Laura Molinelli put up. They're not as obvious as I wish they were, but they do get some attention. I also like perhaps those little plastic guys like Travis has in front of his house. They're about 3 feet tall, and you could put a speed sign in its hand or a flag or something. And they're not, I don't think they're very expensive. I have a letter from Ann DuBois, and she asked me if I would read it, and I will. I'm very concerned with the speed with which cars and trucks zoom through Jamaica Village. We have children that live right on Route 30 and many just off. We have cars full of people unloading at D&Ks. We have a continual flow of people in Airbnbs and people on bicycles riding up from the local houses and the campground. We have a dangerous situation. I believe that many people are going faster than they realize and are not intentionally speeding through town. They come off a long country road and down a steep hill, and suddenly they're in a village. I believe that signage is the best avenue, the best answer. Distinctive, unmissable signage. Cutouts of children, large signs with the speed limit on them, creative signs, and polite reminders. I would like the letters to be written to businesses with trucks that come through town regularly, asking them to address this with their drivers. Some local trucks are the worst offenders. The huge double trucks and logging trucks particularly scare me, as do the heavy dump trucks. I also have a suggestion from Laura Molinelli directly, and I kind of like it. Plywood life-size silhouettes of humans can be painted abstractly or realistically, each one different at both ends of town. They are anchored to the ground, trees, or utility poles somehow close to the road. The brighter and wilder, the better, to make people slow down and look basically free. I don't know what that means. Basically free, of course. If the town would pay for plywood and someone to cut out a human figure, we can give them out to people who want to paint them. There may be a jury. So that's an informal way to put it, but I think that's not a bad idea and would not cost very much. It would certainly garner attention.
Yeah.
And that's what I have.
Super, thank you. Yeah, and I think as we're going, I mean, I know Paul too has a nice list in that. Put these together in our heads and say, you know, let's go on some of them, and some of them might need a little bit more research about what's permissible. But very nice, good, thanks.
Well, also the permissible doesn't include private property, so you know, people can put things up on private property.
Oh, absolutely, right. But if we start saying we're going to throw up another speed sign and halfway up the hill and, you know, changing the speed limits or whatever, I mean, all those are viable suggestions.
No, we wouldn't be changing the speed limits. We'd just be noticing them sooner. Right.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm trying to, not contradicting it, just saying that some of these things will require you know, to go through the state to put up the sign and things like that. So.
Yeah, there are plenty of suggestions to put in traffic circles, which are very impractical.
Maybe not the right thing. All right, thank you. Yeah, Paul, you up next again.
Thank you. The couple of things, the first couple of things has to do with the signs on the telephone poles, utility poles. They're not lawful. I'm surprised they've lasted this long. The utility people do not like people to put signs on their poles. They've tried to explain to me about half a dozen times why we couldn't do it. And it's got to do with safety and a bunch of other stuff. But those, I'm surprised they're still there. We're not allowed to do that.
Yeah. Actually, hang on one second. I don't want to, not to step over you, but I wanted to kind of, and maybe I didn't, maybe I'm just thinking this out loud as we go. There's going to be some stuff that's not practical and doesn't make sense and really has some reasons we can't do it. But just to take this time right now, it's more of a brainstorming session of suggestions and ideas. And this is what I was alluding to before too, to say some of this is going to take a little bit more research. So to, not research, but to say some authorization of what can be and can't be done. And maybe those signs can just be thrown up on a sawhorse instead of on the telephone pole and still have the same impact. But anyways, okay, thank you. So,
yeah, there's plenty of ways to do that. What we have to make sure is what we don't do, what some of us have done, and that's put the sawhorses out on the pavement. As you know, anybody's driven on Pikes Falls Road recently, the last couple of days it's moved onto the sidewalk, onto the grass, but we've had people who are literally dodging them to get and going into the other lane because there's not enough room. So we can't interfere with traffic, and we can't put things on public utility poles. Having said that, since last we chatted, I've gotten a copy of the Vermont Route 30 Traffic Calming Project from September of 2001. And I talked to one of the people who were on that committee, which I think is in the audience with you. Is Stomsky with you today?
it's here, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so he was on that committee, as well as Elaine Beckwith and another person I don't know, reading what some of their suggestions were. And they range from a traffic circle in front of the firehouse to a variety of things that are somewhat more practical. And I also looked at the MUTCD, which is the Municipal Uniform Traffic Code. I don't remember what the D stands for. But at any rate, between the Orange Book, which the state tells us how to do stuff, and the MUTCD, which basically I believe is a federal guideline, trying to come up with things that aren't prohibited, that seem to make sense. And the kind of things that have come up, we talked about lines. And I've been trying to find, and I have not found any prohibition about us striping the road. By that I mean when someone comes into the town, I'm not talking Route 30 now, I'm talking Pikes Falls, or although it's probably not necessary for Depot Street, but Pikes Falls, when you come off of Stratton and you come on down, you may not realize you're in a town until you're already at the stop sign at South Hill Road. So as we come in around the corner just north of Mike Crockett's, if we were striping the entire section of road, plus striping the piece from South Hill, say at the the light, bring it on down into that, clearly signifies that you are no longer on this rural road in the middle of nowhere. You've now entered something, if not a neighborhood, at least something's there. That's a possibility I can't find any prohibition against. The other thing that I thought, and this one came from one of the people who lives on town on Pikes Falls, was the idea of using rumble strips. Now, this is a combination of an idea. Rumble strips have some pluses and minuses. I've talked to Keith about them, and he says there's two kinds. You can build a rumble strip that has, it's elevated over the road, or you can have one that's indented into the road. The elevated ones cause grief to snowplows. The ones below cause grief in that eventually over 4 or 5 years, he says, water builds up in there and it creates a pothole. So there's no really good solution, but that's easier on the snowplows. The idea would be to put a rumble strip at the 25-mile-per-hour signs so that there is not just the visuals, which most people have learned to just ignore, but suddenly your car's shaking. And then you can see that there's a sign that says 25. And if we put them at those spots, that has not just the visual, but it also has the tactile sensation. Part of that may include, and again, we're throwing out ideas, years ago, and I think it may have had something to do with that traffic calming study, it's unclear, they had a series around the state of Vermont of 3 lines in the road leading up to the villages, so that people saw decreasing space between lines, and it was a sense of your speed, optical illusion because of the signs, the lines. Those are only 3 lines at the front end and the back end of the town. They really worked years ago. They worked really good. They faded away. They've never been replaced. That would be cheaper than lining the entire road. But when you're talking about a neighborhood that's got 9 and perhaps 11 little kids running around on their bicycles, we may want to be more aggressive than just a couple of lines as you come into town. But that would be a visual. The rumble strips is a visual and a tactile. We've got the signs that say 25, but they're more ignored than they are observed. So those are some of the things, and I've still taken ideas, but those are the ones that have surfaced as not being illegal, having the advantage of being visual, tactile, as well as the speed limit signs. The gentleman who talked with Keith and I about the signs years ago and how we got to a stop sign on Pikes Falls with no sign on South Hill. His advice to us was to not put in children playing signs. He said the only people who pay a lick of attention to those signs are the lawyers after something goes bad on a street that's not marked. And then they want to know why you didn't mark that street. So, but his advice from the state was to not use those signs. He also said, you can put up all the signs you want. There's people who are going to ignore them because they're used to ignoring signs. So those are the kinds of things that have come up so far. It seems like the striping, the rumble strips, or those three little discrete little packages of stripes as you enter the town. We can do that, I'm pretty sure, on Route 30 because it was done before. I'm not sure now that there's a new head of District 2 whether that's doable or not. I haven't gotten into talking to those guys, but we can most certainly do it on ours. Now, we're going to have this section of road, the Pikes Falls section is going to be repaved by I think the end of this month. I think it's when they're going to start it. So we will have an opportunity to do that afterwards. We certainly would want to do it now, but we can discuss and price out the idea of the rumble strips. I'm a big fan of the speed signs that grab you by radar and flash and say thank you when you go under 25. Having said that, they're like $9,000. I think they come up with a price on those things. So and I'm not sure, Terry, is there a subscription rate to that too?
There is. I researched it. There is
Okay.
a subscription rate. Yeah.
So you shell out $9,000, then you say a subscription rate.
It's like $1,500 a year. Yeah.
What's up? Say again.
$1,500 a year, I think it was.
Okay, so it's $9,000, $1,500 a year. It's expensive. I think in a bigger town that makes really good sense. I know I see it all the time when I go through Chester. I'm not sure if the expense is warranted here. We get one kid hit, and that's going to be really, really cheap. We'll spend it, but there may be things we can afford to do that for a small town. I just can't see putting a, they're talking about ways of dividing up. If you go through the things that were discussed in 2001, the traffic circle that was alluded to, they're also talking about putting dividers in between. So you have to slow down with dividers. The problem with that is there's not a lot of room on that road, put anything further in the right of way because there's no place to go. We don't have literally enough width to do that. So a lot of those things were discarded back in 2001, but I've still got the book for it so we can look at the prices. And I could not find a price anywhere for the rumble strips, but I do know a lot of the other stuffs are pretty expensive. So there's some more research to be done. Clearly, VTrans needs to be talked to about this, but I want to give you guys a sense of what I've been able to scrape up, chasing all the things telling us what we were supposed to be doing and what we're allowed to do.
I think there's a ton of great stuff here, and I actually see a few other people raising their hands. Jessica.
Just quickly, I guess both to Paul and to Joel, although Joel, this was your first suggestion, what we were just discussing, the flashing sign. My recollection is there's a reasonable rental rate, which I wondered if someone had the rate to rent the sign for 4 to 8 weeks during the high part of the summer as well. And the sign that we had discussed, and I believe before I was on the board, the town had utilized on Depot Street, actually collected data. So do we have the numbers for that? Maybe Terry remembers how much that cost?
The item that you're talking about at Depot Street was the Sheriff's Department. Didn't cost us anything.
No.
Put it up at our request.
And we didn't get any data because they lost the data.
Something messed up with it.
We tried to get the data and they didn't have it.
All right. Is that a possibility for one or more locations in town?
Yes.
I could add to that when you get a second.
Yeah, Andy, go.
I spoke to the sheriff's department about, I saw the deputy that lives in town, and I talked to him about a couple of things, but they have been setting up directed patrols on Pikes Falls Road. They did it last month. Terry, we hadn't got they give a report every, it looks like every billing cycle. But anyway, yes, we could take the box and put it up in the pull off on Pikes Falls, right where that changes to the 25. I could ask, is it a guarantee that the data gets collected? I think it's supposed to. And another thing with that box is, in other states, those boxes and signs I'm not going to say whether this one does or not, but they record your speed and give you tickets. And so some people won't know if they do that. So there's that, that the threat of getting a ticket going by one of those boxes, but it does at least calculate how many cars go by. And like Tom said before, the last time I guess we did ask them, they couldn't retrieve the data on Depot Street, and that box moved like 4 times in a few months. It was up and down the road. But to make a long story longer, the deputy said, or I had a conversation with the sheriff about something else, that yes, if we could request the box or whatever they call that and have it put different places in town. So that much I know. And I could find out for sure if the data is reliable or it is even possible that is accurate and does that. It's capable of that.
I think that'd be a good idea, because that would also give us.
One quick follow-up question. Does it tell you what speed you're going, or does it tell you? It does. Okay. Sorry, Paul. I just wanted to make sure it did that. Yeah.
My thinking is, if we have the information specifically that we know for sure what the speeds are over time, that will also inform us in our decision-making about all the other things we can do. So while we're doing the research for that, I'd love to see that speed box or whatever it's called up there in Pikes Falls and other roads that may have these kinds of difficulties. I speak to Pikes Falls because it's a class 2 road. There's only certain things we can do, and it's a major thoroughfare between here and, I guess, the ski areas.
If it's the board's pleasure, I'd be glad to contact the Sheriff's Department and ask them about the availability of that piece of equipment.
Definitely.
I'd say absolutely, yeah.
What about, at the last meeting, didn't we discuss putting a stop sign at the bottom of South Hill?
We did.
On that curve? Go ahead.
I readdressed that with Keith.
Yeah.
We talked about that because we were talking about that we're having these options. Part of the problem with the stop sign has to do with the slick roads in the winter and the lack of the sight distance. As soon as you come over the hill, by the time you see the stop sign, even if you put a warning sign up there, you don't have a lot of time. You've got more time on the Pikes Falls. But the biggest thing is it's slippery, it's icy, and you're trying to stop traffic with very little options. Whereas
I don't subscribe to that. I mean, if people can't stop, if we're making a decision based on the fact that the roads might be slippery, but I do hear some of these other things that, because Keith talked about that too, but that it may have to be a 3-way stop because of the way the right-of-ways go and somebody's making a left-hand turn, and if they're not stopping. But if more than anything, there should be, maybe that's where rumble strips go up halfway up Pikes or South Hill Road too, to get the people to slow down before they get to the stop sign. And obviously we'll need to address different signage. If we just throw one up there, we don't want it to be a surprise. There needs to be some warning of it. So
yeah, like maybe a sign up above stop ahead or something like that.
yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff here, and a lot of probably low hanging fruit too. Terry.
Yes, well, rather than just waiting, getting some information about the sign that's of no cost to the town, can we just say that Andy has the authority to speak with the sheriff and have perhaps one at Pikes Falls and one entering the town from the north on Route 30, where the sheriff feels appropriate near the bridge?
Yeah, I think there is only one, but it can certainly be moved around, and it'd be well worth looking at the data if we can move it around and capture multiple sets of data.
Right. But that there's at least, Andy has authority to, in his conversation, say, go ahead and please make a formal request.
yeah,
I'd make that motion, or everybody, yeah.
I'll second it.
I don't think you need a motion. I think I could just do it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it
Well,
anyway.
this way there's no question.
Terry had her hand up.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that in order to put any kind of a sign back at the end of South Hill, or to change a speed limit, or to change any sign, you have to amend the traffic ordinance.
And
And
hence
that would
the traffic
And that would
ordinance.
include a traffic study to do that.
Well, speed changes, you have to have a traffic study. I don't believe changing a sign,
Maybe
you
not.
need the traffic study. But I just wanted to throw that out there because then that's a process. Unless you had a whole list of things to change in the traffic ordinance. So.
Yeah, and that's the reason why it was up on the drive, just to kind of take a look at it. We may want to change a few other things, or certainly a couple things. And it is a little bit more complicated than some of these other items that have come up. So I guess, I don't know exactly, I'm kind of, again, talking off the top of my head where we go with this. I mean, some of these things are very doable. And I think it's going to be a conglomeration of different things. It's not going to be a single solution to start work on some of these right away.
Right. So the low hanging fruit, to use Paul's expression, in terms of brightening the painting of the crosswalks. I agree, they have completely faded. And I do notice situations where people are not sure if they can cross. Cars aren't seeing readily, especially non-locals are not seeing readily that that's a crosswalk. You know, just to get an estimate on the cost to do that. Is that something our road crew can do, as well as the lines? I mean,
Yeah, and we actually had it done last year, and I think it probably should be something that's done every year. And we do have to put it out to bid. I mean, there's not a lot of people that do, I would guess, but maybe bid it with the crosswalks along with the lining, at least on Pikes Falls Road, and then look into the state lining the other roads when they paint the lines, when they paint the other roads in the fall or whenever.
And an estimate for the rumble strip, whatever cutting device they use for the rumble, just get it, let's get costs.
Yeah, the paving company may know that. That's putting in the pavement.
The line striping on class 2 roads is done by the state.
It is also, okay.
No, Terry's shaking her head.
Oh, not on my road.
Terry?
Only the yellow line striping on a class 2 road is done by the state, but the crosswalk.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the yellow line stripe.
Yeah.
I was meaning the horizontal striping.
No, we don't even know we can do that. We've got to run that through the state before we go too farther with that. I want to make sure that's not going to give them a heart attack.
On Pikes Falls Road?
What's that?
On Pikes Falls Road? Or on Route 30?
Anywhere. They did it on Route 30 for years. I don't know why we can't do it on the class 2, but I will have to check that out. I'm going to talk to the District 2 about that.
Thank you.
Do you want to do that? Take the lead on that and finding out what can be done for striping on both 30 and on Pikes Falls?
Yeah, I'll try to get a sense of what it costs too, because obviously that's going to be a factor.
Right.
And so are we looking back to that stop sign? Are we looking to do that? And if we are, is there next steps on that?
Well,
are we bagging that?
The problem I have with the stop sign is that Keith and I and the state went round and around about putting a stop sign there years ago.
Okay.
And I'm not interested in spinning my wheels to reinvent the wheel that we already decided wasn't a good idea for all their reasons. They had some reasons I remember and some I didn't, but they all seem to boil down to stop sign in Pikes Falls, nothing on, I thought a yield sign, he talked me out of that, but nothing on South Hill. And they're the pros. Yeah,
I'd say it's worth looking into again. I feel like we want to look at every one of these items on here and say,
I agree.
It makes sense or absolutely doesn't make sense. If we just, we're kind of, I mean, none of us are experts on that, and call in some experts and see what they say again. I mean, not to spend too much time on it, but if they've got they may have something just written up why it works and why it doesn't.
Does the road commissioner, not to complicate things further, does the road commissioner have any say in this or play any part in this, or should be included, or is that not in their purview of duties?
Be included, and just, I mean, she's going to have some good feedback too, and maybe even can do some of the research on it. Yeah, we don't want to cut it out. But I think it is kind of our decision too, at least to come up with all the information. And then when we act on any information, we'll make sure we have everybody's say. Yeah, that's a good point. Joel.
Chris Campany spoke a lot about this because apparently this is a problem up and down Route 30.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that Wyndham Regional would have some good input into this situation.
Yeah, and they seemed very, I mean, they jumped right on it as soon as I started. When I only spent 5 minutes asking a question and they were all over it.
Yeah.
They're a great resource.
Well, that's where I got this, and
Where those came from, yeah.
a lot of information about the costs for all their different options and designs. They've got it specific for Jamaica. Even though the select board at the time opted out of participating, they still went ahead and included Jamaica in the planning. So we've got a lot of information, including the costs. Now, that's 2001, so everything has gone up, but it gives us an approximation anyway.
Yep. And I think one other thing that I'm seeing in here, I think that we've kind of addressed a lot of these in some ways, but one other, the reach out to the commercial vehicle fleets out there. I'd like to throw out a suggestion to if everybody's, if the board so sees fit to throw out that Terry kind of pull the list of everybody who's applied for an overweight permit, and just to write them, start with that, to write a letter and say, hey, this is a concern in our town, and have a draft of a letter written up that we can all look at and send out to that group.
I'm happy to work with Terry to draft the letter.
Is that appropriate for a select board to ask people to do things that, I take issue with, say, going to Amadon's and giving them a letter to slow their trucks down from the select board. I'd rather see it come from the sheriff's department or something. We have to live with everyone in town here, and I don't like the idea of going and individually. I understand maybe what you're talking about, going to everyone that's got a weight permit, but for us to start telling everyone to slow down, I'm not sure I'm on board with that as a select board member. You guys and girls can, but I'm not. I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah. Well, I think I hear you, Andy. Maybe let's take a draft out a letter, Jessica, and have it not be a pointing fingers kind of letter. I mean,
it can be I actually was thinking it would be generic, and it would be the same letter to everyone.
But I see Andy's point too. I mean, we don't want to come across that somebody may feel they're being targeted, or that we are taking that initiative when it's really the sheriff's role. But
we're not law enforcement.
Yeah, well, the sheriff's role is law enforcement. So I hear completely, Andy, that our role is not enforcing the law. However, our role is definitely to, when we are receiving as many complaints and concerns as we are on this topic, is to avail ourselves of any method by which we can potentially augment or improve the situation. One would be to say I think personally, I think that that's a nice objective universe, which is companies that we know have large vehicles that are traveling regularly through the town because they're paying for the privilege. To say that the letter can be generic. It can say, we are sending a letter to all those companies that are have sought permits for this to travel through town, that we are seeing particularly off hours, speed. I'm not going to use these particular words, but to say we're seeing this behavior, and we are reminding all of our customers, so to speak, that this is these are the hazards, and to please be extra careful in ensuring that your drivers are complying with speed limitations. I mean, if we need to go farther than that because there are known violators, we can either send them a letter, or we can do, I think, something closer to what you might be more comfortable with, which is to reach out to the sheriff's department and say, listen, we're seeing a lot of observations with X company speeding. Is there something you as law enforcement can do to help ameliorate that? But a generic letter, I think, it won't take me long. I could work with Terry to come up with the list and to make a proposed generic letter, and then give it to the board to react to.
How many, now I'm not minimizing this, but just hear me out. how many, are we getting 6 complaints? Are we getting 50 complaints? Or we got 4 people who are always concerned, and I don't blame them. I live on a road. I live on an intersection.
I've
I
personally
mean, I
gotten
just don't
more than a dozen.
want
I have
us to overreact.
Personally,
Like,
I have gotten more than a dozen. More than a dozen.
how come no one tells me that then?
I don't know.
How come in the sheriff's department, I mean, it tells how many complaints they get. How come there's not 48 complaints in 3 months? That's all I'm saying is, you know, I know some people are having some serious problems, and I'm not minimizing that. If my dog got run over, I don't have any kids except for him. If he got run over, I would be really,
Oh
really,
my God,
really,
can you imagine?
really upset.
Yeah.
So
So that's partly why I'm hearing this from so many different quarters, different areas of the town, different walks of life, different ages, locals and some weekenders. You know, it's been a real cross section, and it's only increasing. And that's why I personally feel like I don't want to be letting this go when it sounds like we've got a bunch of options here that we're pursuing. Including the sign, Andy, but I don't want to eliminate the potential that we might be just sending a generic letter kind of saying, we're aware of this, please, please be sensitive and help us keep our town safe.
Jerry keeps waving.
Okay, yep.
Joel, can you get me a list of people that I could cross-reference with my list? Because I'm not sure that we've got overweight permits for everybody. I'm talking businesses that I'm not sure that we have overweight permits for everyone.
I know of 2 companies specifically that are always going through town at 45, 50 miles an hour.
Okay.
Routinely. And I don't want to name them now, but I will.
No, but if you could get me those, then I can either add them to my list if they're not on there, or they are on there.
I don't think we should be short-sighted about this because it may be uncomfortable. I think that this is a real hazard. I know Laura had 2 pets run over already. I know that people cut around me when I go into my driveway. Those aren't trucks. From the day I lived here, I saw the risk of being on the curve of the bridge from tandem loggers, but I don't see names on those, but I will look for them. But I can give you at least 2 companies that should be, this should be pointed out to. And I don't think we have to be harsh at the beginning, but I think that it requires, I mean, the select board is not law enforcement, but the select board is the governance of Jamaica and should respond to this in the way that a governance would respond.
And when you say we, how are you speaking as a citizen or what? We as a town or we as a select board?
We as a town.
Nah, I'm not liking this. I'll go along with whatever you want to do, but
you may not like it.
You
may not like it, but you're not.
You move on. You buy a house on the road, you're going to lose a pet. I lived on roads my whole life, and things get run over, whether they're speeding or not. And
that's just accepting something that.
No,
if you have a pet running out in the road and somebody's driving the traffic speed limit, and the pet gets run over, nothing was done illegally there. But if you're coming through a town at 50 miles an hour,
I understand that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I think we got to take maybe this doesn't go anywhere, but I mean, I think a lot of it will be what the letter says, and maybe it came to my mind first the overweight permits. That's probably a much too restricted list. We don't want to just pick on the people, so to speak, that are working for us or with us. And I mean, I think it's a friendly community-based letter. Maybe the select board, not the select board, maybe the sheriff's does have a say in it too. I mean, and that they are co-signatures on it. You know,
I'd like to point out also that the town trucks are guilty of that many times, and that was mentioned to me by several other people as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think
You know that law enforcement is trained to measure speed by 2 miles to the speed limit up and down. Are we all certified to do that? I mean, we can tell the town trucks are going 38 instead of 35.
These trucks are going much more than 38.
I'm not certified to know
but-
how fast.
Yeah,
the
but
trucks are going.
a radar sign is certified to know.
Yeah, all these things together, I think is what has to happen. It's not one of these things, any one individual thing.
What about Laura was asking for the plywood. I mean, will the town, I mean, that's something that's fairly inexpensive to do, like she's saying. Do we
I'd
want
like to see that go a little further through to say, okay, where are they going to go? I mean, we're not going to strap them on the guardrail or on the
Yeah.
telephone pole. So, I mean, I'm not kind of shutting down that, but just to say, okay, see it all the way through and where do they go? I mean, I think that somebody said it earlier. I think the personal signage is really, it's not just our town, everywhere you go, even on some back roads, there's, you can tell the kids wrote the sign. That's meaningful. Terry, you had something?
Just that anything on Route 30 is the jurisdiction of District 2.
Right.
And I don't know about now with everything else that happened, but they're supposed to take anything out of their right of way that's put in their right of way, which I believe is 11 feet off the white line of the road. So I would hate to have somebody spend the time to make like those people, the life-size people, and put them within the right of way, and then they get taken by the V-Trans people. Because my nephew works for V-Trans, and a lot of times, like coming up here pretty soon, there'll be a lot of political signs out that people just put on their lawns and stuff. And if they're too close if they're within their right of way, they will take them back to Dummerston with them. So
There were signs all over Route 30 in the last election. Nobody took them down. And the right of way, I think, is 25 feet from the center line on each side.
I know I personally
yeah, so it would be about 11 feet from the edge of the road.
Yeah. That's something, I think, back to Tom's point, that's something worth having all those pieces and knowing all that before we say, oh, here's your plywood.
Okay.
Well, the other piece of the concern too is if we start financially supporting a signage situation without paying any attention to our own sign laws, we can get into trouble. We don't need to be supporting that sort of stuff. I agree. Something needs to be done, but if we're going to do it, if the select board is going to pay for it, we have to make real sure we're doing it properly.
Right. I'd rather spend the money on the real sign.
I think there are people on Route 30 who wouldn't care if you paid for it or not.
They aren't members of the select board.
People would be willing to do it on their own.
Right. Yeah.
Let them. We can't be involved
Yeah, we have enough signs we can put up.
legally.
Okay, anything else? I mean, that's a great discussion. I mean, I know there's a lot of items in there, and it is a legit concern for sure. I think everybody's got some little tasks in there. Okay, any further comments? Thank you all. Thank you, Paul and Joel. So on to the next item.
Are we on to the monument?
We are on to the number 8, the monument.
Not quite as interesting as or spirited as the last conversation. I have a little show and tell, which I'm hoping, can everybody kind of see that little triangle?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the intersection of 30 and 100. And this, I realize it's backwards, isn't it? But you can basically get a sense of the fact that there is this funny triangle designated by the deed that's associated with this plot, which is owned by Suzanne Rice. Wilbur Rice owns this one.
Nope, the other side.
Oh, the other side, this one. Sorry, across the street from Suzanne. Thank you. Within this triangle, disembodied triangle, is another rectangle, small rectangle, which is probably here, although the monument doesn't actually reside on, it's unfortunately, there's a multiple series of unfortunate sort of things that have morphed over the years. The original deed is the original grant is from 1915. So, but then the school is behind here. So we've got a couple of issues now. Everybody just kind of keep that in your mind. So we've got a triangle, which is owned by Suzanne Rice. Within that triangle is another rectangle, smaller rectangle, and that is owned by the descendants of the Rawson family. It's actually an association, a family association. And Lou graciously pulled the prior deeds. It's pretty clear that this is still the case. Suzanne owns that triangle, but she does not own the piece that is owned by the descendants of the Rawson family. And currently, for some period of time, before my tenure on this board, the town has essentially been caring for this little triangle. We had discussed at the last meeting potentially just simply seeking a quitclaim deed for the portion that is owned by the descendants of the Rawson family, as they're the ones who are asking for this to be cared for. And by quitclaim meaning to just simply to sign over to the town ownership of that parcel in exchange for a new covenant that would run with that parcel, obligating the town to maintain it. And we could be fairly specific about what that entails. However, Lou is not on the call, but he and I did meet and we went over there and we discussed this. The much more straightforward and potentially successful option that would not require, new surveys, updating deeds, which are all quite old, would be simply to approach both Suzanne Rice as well as the Rawson Descendants Association to see if they would both be willing to quitclaim their portion. Lou ran some numbers. I'm not sure Terry has it. It's not a big loss. We have to look at, okay, there's some tax revenue to the town associated with this small triangle. It's not much. So I do have to update the board with what that would be. But suffice it to say, it's de minimis, and we don't know whether either of these parties would be willing. But what I would ask the board today is to agree either, is this something the board would be interested in having us pursue? And if the board is interested, to give Lou and I the authority to reach out to both parties and explore any level of interest that they might have. And this way, the town owns that parcel. We know it's an expense that's associated with some property that the town actually owns rather than an expense we're giving to people who otherwise own the property. We would be forfeiting a small amount of tax revenue, but I don't think that would really factor in. But Lou can give us more definitive numbers when he's ready. But just to see if is there some heart for this among the board?
I think so. Yeah. I'd support it.
Paul?
I have one question. I don't want to sound like the bad guy, but sometimes that's my only.
We need a diverse board, and you can be that person.
I'll be that diverse person right now. What do we get out of this besides the responsibility of maintaining it?
So we are actually maintaining it now. We're spending the money on it now. We're not going to stop spending the money on it because it would become an eyesore very quickly. And there is history for the town in this, in the monument. So it would be ameliorating a situation which is ongoing by actually maintaining property, town property rather than privately owned property. We're not, I don't believe the town is interested in stopping this, ceasing spending this money. So let's have some property for it.
Yeah, and I think I would probably think twice about whether it made sense if it was just a standalone monument, but the fact that it's right there contiguous with a piece of property the town already owns.
Yep.
And the historical aspect of it all, you know, I think maintaining that part of it is important to small towns, is keeping track of our histories.
Andy, did Andy?
I don't know what to think of it. I understand how complicated it is. Not to be a real bad guy or anything, but is that monument cool? I mean, we're not gonna get some old history on it that it needs to be taken away or anything like that. I mean, I mean, it's not a controversial monument. I mean,
You mean?
you know what I mean? Because nothing would surprise me. We do all this and then it's got to be taken out of there.
Right.
Yeah,
That's, I mean,
it's a good point.
well,
No, it's an
I
excellent.
would believe
that's an
anything
excellent
lately.
point.
So
It's an excellent point.
I'm not being a wise guy or anything.
I'm taking it the opposite way. You're being sensitive to
Right.
whether this is something that the town wants to support. I don't believe there's anything controversial, but let me confirm that.
Well, and I understand it must be a minuscule amount of tax money. Well, I would be for, I guess, I would be for straightening all that out the way you just tried to explain.
Okay.
Mhm.
So can I make a motion that Lou and I are authorized to approach the two indicated landowners to explore the possibility of a transaction granting the town ownership of these parcels under a quitclaim deed?
I'll second.
Paul, additional comment?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. No, I have to wait till you get a second before you can do the additional
Oh,
comment. On the other side of my bad guyness, the Rawsonville family have been maintaining this for a long, long time. We've been doing some of it. They've been doing some other stuff. That family is beginning to kind of die off.
Right.
Partly because they're dying off, and partly because the kids of the kids of the kids are less interested in it. It makes sense to me as a community to support that, because I don't think the cost is irrelevant. I think that I'm worried a little bit about the liability, which I think Andy's just mentioned, but I think the cost tax-wise, I don't think we'll lose any money. I don't think it costs that much more to add that into the whatever we're paying to have the school. So I don't think the cost is an issue. I think the potential liability is, but also those guys have done a lot over the years to maintain that property, and I have no problem supporting that.
Okay, super. Any additional comment?
Vote.
All in favor of supporting Jessica's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, supported 100%. Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
you're going to then come back with some numbers, recommended course of action, and then in the meantime, talk to the property owners.
Exactly. Well, at the next meeting.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that's number 8. We already hit off number 9. Brian asked me to comment on number 10. He's working on pulling together just a real comprehensive fact sheet for all the details of what the Planning Commission has proposed for an initiative for a community septic. So he wanted to just let us know that he's still waiting for some stuff on the scope of the design, make sure that we have everything so we can make an educated decision, so that we can move forward in the best fashion. So that's still coming. And then number 11, of course, Pat asked me to put this on there, but the Jamaica Arts Council, and maybe Tom can add to this.
I can talk a little bit. Yeah, so Pat's has been talking to Ida Specker to have the Speckers come out and play an outdoor show down near the Rawsonville School. And I'm assuming she wanted me to bring that before the board to make sure that you guys are okay with that.
Yes, some of it was the discussion of just awareness. Obviously it's not going to take place inside the hall here.
Right.
This could all change. I mean, if things really start to go different, that we find out tomorrow. But Ida had suggested doing it at the school there, at the old school versus at the new school in town here, just because of the historical aspect of it.
Yeah.
Many of those local businesses, I think Pat was talking about reaching out to them, just so they're aware. Most of them would not be open during that time period, so there shouldn't be issues with neighborhood parking and things like that. So that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, the shows that would be the 23rd. And this was something that was scheduled, I think rearranged to have them play at the hall. This was the one show that we set up this year that before the COVID.
Is that August? Is that August or
No,
July
July 23rd. So it's in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Thursday.
Thursday. Right. So I know Honey Pie's not open on Thursdays.
Correct.
So I don't know what she wants, if we want a blessing or, I mean, again, if things really spike up, I can see where we potentially would cancel it. I mean, obviously we want to be careful.
Right. Yeah, Terry?
I'm just wondering if I should reach out to the insurance company.
Well, we have our own insurance.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, the whole COVID thing, and it's insured by the town and.
Huh. Well, we have our own liability insurance. The organization has our own liability insurance. So so we carry that wherever we go. So if any venue that we're in, we cover the liability. But again, that's a really good question for us to look into to say, yeah, if we do hold a show and 20 people get sick, can they come back and sue us?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question.
It's definitely worth looking into. And I know a couple other things that, Pat was looking into having a porta potty drop down there too. So there's, upgrade the facility, so to speak, a little.
Yeah, but then again, that's just increases the risk.
Yeah. So I think it's a work in progress. I believe it was more from an awareness standpoint and also just to do what we've done now to generate some, what are the concerns so they can kind of be looked into.
Yeah. I'll have to call our insurance company and see.
Yeah.
If they have any stipulation around that.
Okay.
And again, with the things, with the number of cases spiking over in that area, it doesn't necessarily seem like the smartest thing to do.
Maybe a moot point at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say I report back to the board, but the show would be before the next meeting. So I'll report back if we did do it.
Okay.
Tom, can I ask you a quick question? Just someone is messaging me that they were asked for a password to join the meeting, but there's no password required, right?
There's no this meeting?
Yeah, the Zoom meeting.
No, I let them in. There's a waiting room, and I allow them in the meeting. I allow them.
Oh, okay, all right.
Who is it?
Heather.
Oh, no, she just should get right in. There's no password. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
We're on to other public concerns, and there was a few. I know, John.
I have something too.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Well, the town came by and weed whacked in front of my house and along the guardrail, and then they just left everything in the road. Are they going to come back and clean that up? Because there's all this leaves and tree, like plants it was all on the road. So I'd like to see the road crew come by and sweep it up or at least push it off the road. I mean, there's like all that stuff on the road.
Well, I'll bring that up.
It looks terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's starting to wilt away now, but when they did it, it was like, oh, they're coming back tomorrow to
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, Keith's having Dennis do more of those little kind of side road projects type of things and take care of things, but it sounds like it's only being half done.
Yeah, and he was also here at like 6:30 in the morning, weed whacking out in front of my house, and I was like, "What's going on?"
It wasn't that early.
It was that early. It was 6:30.
It's like 7:15.
All right, if you say so, Andy. It was pretty early though.
Okay. Yeah, Joel.
You're on mute.
Couple of things. I walk around there all the time, and I saw a lot of what I assume, and I looked it up online, is giant hogweed. And I saw Greg Jolly, and I asked him to confirm because he said he knew it, and he said yes, it was. And he said he would mention it to Keith. That's the last I know of the situation. So when the town came to weed whack, and you really can't weed whack giant hogweed, you will get sprayed. The giant hogweed is still there. It's across from the Sugar Shack. It's on the west end of River Road. And that's a very potentially dangerous plant. And there's more and more. I counted at least 10 or 15 plants near the Sugar Shack and then across from Veda's house. So I think we should look into, I mean, the corner of Route 30 and that road is also a swamp of poison parsnip, and it's too late to mow it now because it's going to seed.
Yeah. Well, I had pulled out, by my house, I pulled all the poison parsnip out. I dug it all out. So along the guardrail here and in the field. Okay, so we thought there was, I'm not certain it's giant hogweed because we looked, Jackie and I, she has an app on her phone where you can take pictures of leaves, and we thought it was giant hogweed. And when we looked at it, it was what, purple stemmed something else. And it's not, but I'll check it out. I'll check out what you're talking about across all the Vedas and stuff.
I looked it up too. The only reason I suspect at least some of them are, it's because they had a crown.
Yeah, but those, I mean, giant hogweed grow to like 8-10 feet high, and the ones we were looking at were like 6 foot high, and they weren't quite, I mean, but anyway, it could be.
I'm not an expert. I could be wrong. I admit I'm wrong, but we should confirm
purple stemmed angelica looks a lot like giant hogweed. Well, as we learned, down by the river, by the beaver, down by the river where by the bridge, there was a whole bunch down there, but it's all the angelica, and we thought it was all hogweed because it was. I mean, they're striking plants, but I'll check it out up here too.
Let's just make sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, you don't want to touch it. Angelica you can actually eat, and then it's like celery. Giant hogweed, not so much.
You can eat poison parsnip also, but
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, you can't.
You can eat the parsnips.
You can pull up the root and cook it and eat it, but I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
So Bob Stomsky has a comment here now too. He's on with me at the town hall.
Can you guys hear me okay? Probably not. Hi, everybody. I also have a concern on Water Street and Depot Street intersection at the bridge. There's a tall poplar tree that should also be cut, since the town is taking care of all the brush underneath the guardrails and stuff, but there is a large tree there, and it kind of obscures traffic coming down Depot Street when you're pulling out of water. So if Greg could, make the town aware of that, that'd be appreciated too.
Where is that? Where is it, Bob? I'm unmuted.
Where is it located?
Corner of Depot Street and Water Street, right across from Andy's house.
Okay, and there's a tree that's blocking.
It's a poplar tree.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll bring that up with Keith too.
Okay, you can do that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, and then John, we talked a little bit about too, and I know a lot of people in town have some questions, concerns, and just wonderings about the signage stuff going on.
Sure, I'd happy to give you an update. So I have been in contact with the owner of those two buildings, who happens to be Eugene Aletto, who's been a second homeowner here in town, and he's been coming to Jamaica since he was 12. So I had a conversation with him and let him know that the signage does not meet the state or the town's ordinance. I put together a very detailed email to his operations manager, whose name is Marco, and he was going to share that with the marketing department. So, I mean, just a little background, Eugene, for those who don't know him, he owns a bedding company, and his factories are down in South Carolina, and he's, lives on Sage Hill. And, initially it was a little combative, but I just let him know, look, the way the signage ordinance is supposed to apply is that if you own a building and it's an establishment, you have the name of the building that's on the building, and there's a certain limitation to the size of that sign. And then there's also a street sign. So for instance, in Astis, he can have a sign on his building, and then that sign would qualify up front. But on the old Muzzies, those three, what really are billboards, are not allowed. And the other thing I mentioned to Marco, because anyway, Eugene passed me on to Marco, is that you need to really kind of, in essence, describe what it is you're doing, or at least something other than a website, which is called youaresleepy.org. You go on there and it says, where is Jamaica? And then you put your email in there, and then you get no reply that you even were acknowledged that you put your name in to find out more information, and you get nothing. So Greg and I talked this afternoon, and the way that email, detailed email, went out to Marco on Friday. So I'm giving him till Wednesday, and then I'm going to cordially go back out to an email and let him know that we need to know what their actions are going to be to mitigate the signage and to remove them and put up appropriate signage. If I don't get anything back, then we can go back and then start playing hardball and say, look, from at this point onward, if we don't hear back from you, we're going to assess you a fine of a certain amount, and there's a schedule of fines in the ordinance. So, you know, the guy owns the two buildings. I don't want to, you know, be difficult with him, because hopefully he'll bring some business to town with whatever he has in mind. I did mention earlier on to Greg, though, that, and I'm not sure about this, but the board may want to consider putting in some zoning regulations for the heart of town, simply to keep people like Eugene from doing things with buildings that would not be appropriate to the picturesque nature and the historic nature of town. Now, you may not want to zone the rest of the town for those people who have limited means, but those historic buildings in town should be protected so that the facades are not changed and somebody doesn't put up a monstrosity in the middle of town. So anyway, to wrap it up, I'm, you know, on top of it with Eugene's team. By Wednesday, if I don't hear anything back, we'll take the next step, and then we'll take a next step after that and start assessing fines.
Yeah, and we want to work nicely with them, so to speak, and John's been doing a great job on that. I think the other top level thing, and John mentioned it too, is, I mean, this doesn't even meet the state guidelines for signage. I mean, and this has been a law that's been in place for 50 years.
1972.
Held in court and everything else. I mean, there's no questions here. So we're just, I mean, I think first part of it is just the informative side, and John's been working with them just to let him know.
I will add that he thought Karen, who obviously runs D&K, was the mayor of town, and I had to explain to him, because he's from Long Island, that they don't have New England style town government, that, you know, we have a select board, a first select person, and Karen just happens to know a lot because she's the only store in town that people go into. So anyway.
Yeah.
Real quick, can I talk back to what John was saying about the zoning? When we originally wrote the sign ordinance, and Greg, you were part of that, I had thought we were considered putting in a zone for the village.
We have considered it, and I
don't know why that got cut out of it, because I went through that and read it a couple weeks ago, and I was like, that's not in there. But I thought we had that in there. So maybe we need to amend it and just say, you know, if someone's doing something in the village, whatever that is, whatever we decide that is, that it has to follow some sort of guidelines.
Some of our thought process, and again, I'm just trying to remember, is that we started thinking that what applies outside of the town, really, there wasn't anything that was going to be so unique or different, because we had a very, regimented sign ordinance throughout the town, that the village didn't require anything additional to that. So that's kind of what I recall, but
yeah, I don't know.
I should look at it. But I think it's a very strong policy right now. So
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jessica, you were first. You're on mute.
Paco, she's on mute.
John, just a quick question. Do you know, and maybe no one on this call knows offhand, are the two properties in question, are they owned by his corporation or are they owned by him individually?
I do not know that.
I would like to find that out, because if they are owned by him individually, it's not really kosher for you to be talking to his ops manager. He's really the one who needs to be addressing this, because the town will assess a fine against him individually. If it's owned by the corporation and the corporation is the one that's subject to potential fines, then someone who's, who the proprietor of the corporation designates, it makes sense. But it makes me uncomfortable if he owns it individually. And actually, Terry, we could follow up for John tomorrow, right?
Thanks.
Nail that
I'll
down.
look at, I think Asta's might be in his name individually, but he may, I don't want to say for sure. The glass shop may be a different LLC, but I can look in the morning.
Yeah, let's take a
I
quick
think
look.
the top level, the outcome we want is the same, so.
It is.
I hear where you're going. I mean, that's something to look into.
Right. My personal view is the two are not unlinked, right? This concept that he has delegated someone in his operations on a topic like this, I don't know. I think to me, it makes it harder for this to be resolved amicably and without, but it also just, quite frankly, legally, since what we're doing, it really doesn't make sense if he owns it personally for us to be talking to anyone other than the person who's on the deed. That definitely doesn't make sense. If what we're talking about is compliance with the town ordinance where the consequences could potentially be a fine. So that's.
Yeah, Jessica, you're absolutely right, but I don't think there's no differential in his mind between his company and himself in this case. What he has is his marketing team that's part of his bedding company designed those signs, and then Marco, just is the guy that kind of does everything inside his corporation. So I concur with you. Just need to know who owns what, and then we can deal with it appropriately. I mean, my overall opinion of this guy is, and I don't know if anyone knows him, but he owns a private business. He's done whatever he's wanted to do. He's become successful in his own regard, and he thinks nothing of what he's doing. And the point I made to him is that if he was to own a home wherever he lives, would he put placards up on his building? And he kind of brushed it off. I said, well, you have to respect the town that you say you love so much, and that what you're really doing is you're advertising. You're not really providing in the specifics of the ordinance, which is, the name of the building and, not a marketing site that's trying to tease you as to what you have going on. It has nothing to do with the building itself. So anyway.
Yeah, I've seen lots of comments. I don't know. I mean, we're delving kind of deep in this. Paul.
Okay, it got a little bit deeper when he just brought that other thing up.
But I don't know if we need to be figuring it out right here, I guess, is what I'm going after too.
No. Just for his information, because I don't know, I never get a chance to talk to John. During Irene, when we replaced the bridge up on in front of his house, he had a fit multiple times because he could see the bridge from his house. And he didn't want to do that. And then he wanted us to change the color, and they wanted us to change the railings. So he's not been happy with us for some time now, based on what he can see out of his front window. We followed the law, we did what we had to do. Okay, end of that one. Number two, I think if we're going to get into talking about zoning, that's going to be something that has to be dealt with a town vote in March.
Right.
And the other item.
That was just suggestions, yeah.
Yeah, and I got 2 out of 3. What the hell? I'm old. We'll settle for that. He'll come
in your moment.
Yeah.
Joel, the best one too,
Joel and then Andy, and we'll wrap this up.
Okay. I have had some conversation with him, and first of all, I agree with John's assessment. I don't think you have a maximum fine that is enough to dissuade him from those signs. He's got a lot of money. He travels 28 days a month to many countries. So this is not a little company. He's got a huge international company. And he really isn't interested, because I have some concerns since I'm his neighbor. He is not at all interested in my concerns. I know that, you know what, Paul, I just joined your club. I forgot what I was going to say next.
Oh, you're thinking. I remember what the other one was.
I'm glad I could help.
Yeah, you're always a good neighbor. The other one, and you might know the answer to this one, do we know what he's doing with those properties?
He wouldn't tell me.
I know.
This is what he said to me on 2 different occasions. The first time I called him, he said, oh, I'm just the investor. I have nothing to do with it.
Same line he pulled on me.
His crew doesn't agree with that. His crew says and he's already told Karen, because she told me this, that he's definitely looking for somebody to run a restaurant.
Right.
I know what he's done in the Astor's building. He's put bathrooms in all the rooms, so he's obviously going to have some kind of end. And I know that he's totally gutted the place. He's putting a fortune into it. So I don't think it's going to be unsightly, because it looks like he's fixing the building the way it is. I don't think he cares if he makes money, because in a company like that, you can always use tax laws.
All right, thanks.
I think we need a point of order.
That's-
I don't know if we should be discussing this as deeply as we are about this guy's personal business. And another thing, I respect the town ordinance and certainly appreciate what John is trying to do. But right now, people can hang up, put up any kind of thing they want on any kind of sign, as big as they want, paint it on the road, hang it on the side of their buildings or anything. I think we'd have a real hard time enforcing our ordinance in these, with the governor and everything saying you can fly or put up on the side of your building whatever signs you want. I mean, you know, he may have that for an argument. I don't want to give him more fuel, but I just think that I'm a little uncomfortable talking about everything that we are.
Yeah, I think that we need
a couple of signs, you know, I don't.
But-
And personally, that building is a sore spot for me, and I should just disqualify myself from talking. But I certainly understand where Paul's coming from and everything, but I don't think a lot of this is pertinent to the signs that are up there. We're talking about all this other stuff and the bridge and everything. I understand what we're thinking about, but I think it's kind of out of line a little bit.
Yeah, it's really just an update on the sign. I mean, it does not meet the state standards for the billboard law either, and that's and whether
all of that is null and void right now. Anyway,
the signs are not going to come down, in my opinion.
It's not null and void. Just FYI, the sign ordinance for marketing, it's not null and void.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll wrap this up. I mean, we're conjecturing a lot of. I mean, it's probably not the right word, but. Thank you. So, I mean, that brings us, I've kind of thrown out there just as a best practice, I guess, to always have an executive session if needed. Anybody have a desire or need to pull one in?
No.
No.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Do you need a second, Jessica, to adjourn in Robert's rules, or Mr. Chair?
The former chair is saying, trying to.
So technically you do, but it doesn't have to be heard within the meeting. No.
I know at Wyndham Regional, they don't, I second, and they all look at me funny. I don't think they ask for one.
SEVT, they say vote with your feet.
Yeah, I guess I did ask if anybody needed an executive session, and Paul is raising his hand, so I guess we haven't even pulled off of that yet. Is that where we're at?
I don't remember finishing the public concerns. I have a question. Is anybody else in the room with you besides Bob Stomsky?
No, the BCTV television guy.
Right. The reason I ask is because I've been approached by a number of people. What?
Oh, you got more. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Bob was saying something. Go finish.
I was approached and I was told that others were going to be coming tonight because they had some issues they wanted to talk about. And they're not on the screen, so I thought maybe they were there with you. But if they're not,
And
The
that's
only
why
person who's not is Heather. Heather's on the call.
I saw Heather or her just
No.
a minute ago. Yeah.
and then Bob has some comments too. So
Bob's out there.
Bob has the floor.
Hi, everybody. One thing I want to address is the COVID-19 status. This just came out today, just so everybody knows that yesterday in Manchester, they had 5 positive cases. Today it went up to 30. There's a case in West Dover, which is 1, which is out of a dental office. There's a case in Chester of a child in the swimming pool, in the public swimming pool over there. There was an email on it, and I somehow lost that part. There was a case in Londonderry as well. The Dorset Quarry over on Route 30 in Dorset. They decided to close, and I have a letter here that I just read to you guys so you'll have it. Give me a second. Just lost it. Oh well. Anyways, my next concern is with the Hamilton Falls. I understand there's been a lot of traffic going up that way now. It is very secluded, very hard to find, but people are finding it. And on July 8th, Brattleboro Reformer posted pictures of Hamilton Falls. And if you people are not aware, it's a very dangerous spot to be in. For years, we've had fatalities or incidences up there. Our response time is at least 20 minutes. Let alone just getting people to show up at the station, which probably takes another 5 to 10 minutes. Rescue Inc. is the other people that would be up there handling the situation with us. At one time, we used to have Londonderry rescue crew at Hamilton Falls, and I'm not sure what their status is now. So it's very vital that the town takes some kind of an action, pro-action, by maybe informing the state to have them monitor that area, to keep people out. There are signs up there saying, over the years, and this sign I know has been there for 20 years, and they had 10 fatalities listed. So since then, we've had more than that. I believe that the state should take responsibility in putting somebody up there, or a ranger or something, and discouraging people. I know you got a lot of property owners up there that are Jamaica people who probably do not want to see these crowds up there. I know Charlie Peck, you can probably talk to Charlie. Charlie's been a former planning board member and been around the town for a long time. And he lives right there, so he could probably give you a pretty good first-hand knowledge of what's happening. Again, we're just concerned on the fire department side of having the people available to make these calls on a daytime basis. That's open for discussion if you want. Before I go on to my next issue. Greg, or continue?
Continue, yeah.
Okay. My next issue is some nuisance calls that we've been having over the year. One we just had again yesterday was at 380 Wonder Lane, which is off of Dalewood. And it's, again, it was burnt food or something, and we've been up there 5 times already this year. So the department would probably like to establish fines, but we need to work through the town on how we do that. We just need to notify the property owner, because I believe this was a renter that was there when we went up, and notify the renter that he could be possibly fined if we continue to respond to that residence. I can come in and talk more in detail, find out who the owner is and all that. My next issue is, and my last issue is water shortage in the village. I've been talking with members of the department of having adequate water in front of Muzzy's or the glass blow shop there. Is a cistern that's underground. It's only half full, and that's all we can put in there for water. So we're kind of estimating maybe 3,000 to 4,000 gallons of water that may be in that tank. And it limits our supply there for Main Street. Right now, we no longer have a hydrant, dry hydrant at the firehouse. It's been washed out 3 times, and the last time it was washed out during Irene, and has not been replaced. Both brooks on each side of us is very low for pumping water. We've been going around and checking other fire cisterns in the villages and outside the village around the area, making sure there's adequate water in these places so that if there is a fire in those locations, we have a source of getting it. But our concern is the village at this point. One proposal that we've talked about is putting in concrete cisterns in the yard in the back, either 10,000 or up to 30,000 gallons of water. So we're kind of looking for some support from the town, whether it's through grants or whatever, to see that this gets done in a very short time. It's been a dry summer, as we all know, and the bit of rain that we've had has not really filled much of the lakes or rivers or any of that. So I think it's a project we need to work on together in the town. With that being said, thank you much, and appreciate it. And open for suggestions.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Paul?
Yeah, real quick, when he said put the cisterns in the back, he meant in the back of the firehouse.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
Should we add some of those items to the agenda for next time?
We certainly can. I've made notes.
Perfect.
What was the Wonder Lane thing? I couldn't hear that.
For up at Wonder Lane, what was
Someone keeps calling about burnt food or something?
that regarding Wonder Lane? Andy was curious of what he missed exactly what you were responding to.
It's what we're calling nuisance calls. I mean, we've been going up for false alarms, basically. Whether it's burnt food or whatever, we get up there, the alarms aren't going off because the people are shutting them off automatically themselves. So, but the calls come through a security outfit that goes to dispatch in Keene, and then we're dispatched out. So, with that being said, we've been there 5 times already this year for false alarms, basically. And, we've had others in the villages, which are 2 or 3, but, I think we need to come up with some kind of a policy that people know that if we have nuisance alarms and stuff, that they could be fined for it unless they take their own action to deal with it.
Okay.
Terry's up. Go, Terry.
So Stratton has a false alarm ordinance, and they did it because they were experiencing the same thing in the condos up there. The fire department would be called out constantly for false alarms, for automatic fire alarm. And they instituted it years ago, but I could get a copy of it from Kent, and that might be something that you could put into effect.
Yeah, if you could look into that, Bob says wonderful. And yeah, we can then consider that, moving forward with that.
Okay.
All righty. Anything else? Maybe we're now at the adjournment. Oh, no, Tom.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second, whether you need it or not.
Thank you, everyone.